Penguin Audio presents Bob Schieffer's America. This is Bob Schieffer. Preface. This is a book of short essays about life, liberty, and the pursuit of news. The vast majority of the pieces found here were the final thoughts that I began writing in 1994 to tack on the end of our Face the Nation broadcasts. Final thoughts is a misnomer, of course. If writing these pieces has taught me anything, it is that no thoughts should be final, especially mine. While most of them were written over the last 14 years, a few of the somewhat longer ones go back to the 1970s, when I wrote weekly opinion pieces for CBS Radio. Within this collection is to be found everything from reflections on war and peace to advice to fathers on how to act normal. The partisans of the hard right and left, who seem to have no purpose but to prove the rightness of their cause, will discover little of interest here. I find the professional screamers and their checklists of what constitutes a liberal or a conservative predictable to the point of boredom. As I listen to their arguments on the cable channels and their unwillingness to give an inch on any issue, I still long for the day when someone on one side responds to someone on the other side by saying, "What an interesting point. You may be right." I'm still waiting, but I am not holding my breath. I've always believed the greater and more intellectually challenging search is to find the things that bring us together, rather than the differences that drive us apart. In these essays, I've tried to follow the rule laid down by my great teacher Eric Severide to elucidate when one can, rather than advocate. But I have tried as well never to forget his admonition to retain the courage of one's doubts as well as one's convictions in this world of dangerously passionate certainties. Most of the time, these essays are simply observations, snapshots of my thinking about America and Americans and how we came to be who and what we are. Over the years, I've found more to celebrate than to lament about America. To be sure, there was plenty to criticize, including the failure of government in the wake of Katrina, the foolishness of a government bureaucracy so big and cumbersome that it sometimes was unable to get out of its own way, and government in which political spin had become so ingrained that at times its officials could no longer even recognize the truth, let alone tell it. But again and again I would see evidence of the innate good sense and optimism that is so much a part of the American character. No matter the challenge, somehow Americans have always been willing to meet it, and somehow we've always found a way. That part has never changed. I became moderator of Face the Nation in 1991, but the first of the Sunday commentaries did not appear until an April Sunday in 1994, on the weekend after Richard Nixon died. On that Sunday, we covered the news of the day as we always did, then a panel of Nixon's aides reminisced about the highlights and lowlights of Nixon's time in the White House. I felt the program that day needed a button, as we call it in the trade, a sentence or two that sums up or puts in context what has just been seen and heard. So I wrote the following and read it at the conclusion of the broadcast. We end this morning with a personal note. Richard Nixon had been around so long he had become as much a part of the American landscape as the Washington Monument. Now that he's gone, it's a little like looking out the window and discovering the monument is no longer there. It's going to take all of us a little while, I suspect, to adjust to the new landscape. Nixon did some grand things, and he did some dastardly things that greatly disappointed those who had placed their trust in him. But Richard Nixon's life is a reminder that we can learn from the imperfect as well as the perfect. Richard Nixon left the White House in disgrace, but he left the earth with dignity. This was before the days of email, and over the next 2 weeks, those few sentences...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?